Hello everyone, and welcome to round 2 of the 2018 Norway Championship. When I decided which game to show, I thought it'd be nice to check out a game between Sergei Karjakin and Magnus Carlsen, as if we look at the final standings of 2017 Norway Championship, some of you may not know, but Magnus Carlsen and Sergei Karjakin had last place and second to last place. So three and a half out of 9 for Karjakin and 4 out of 9 for Magnus Carlsen. So definitely a terrible tournament for both of them, especially since Carlsen's it's home territory advantage, or in this case disadvantage, and in 2016 these two were battling it out for the title of world champion, as Karjakin was the 2016 World Chess Championship challenger. So definitely an interesting game, and you'll see that Magnus Carlsen really prepares a mean line with the black pieces, and you will see just how far preparation goes in these high-level matches. So we do have. I did find one photo of this encounter. There's Karjakin on the left, Carlsen on the right. Karjakin already played his first move, e4, and Carlsen is waiting for someone to take his photo before actually make his first move. Now that's good psychology there. So we have e4, e5, knight to f3, and knight to c6, and bishop to b5. So the Ruy Lopez is on the board. Just a second. We have a6, Morphy's defense, bishop to a4, we have knight to f6, Karjakin castles, and here already a big surprise for Sergei Karjakin. He played this position plenty of times, and he knows Carlsen played this position plenty of times, and Carlsen always goes bishop to e7, but here for the first time ever Carlsen decided to go bishop to c5. A nice surprise with the black pieces. We have c3. Castles by Carlsen, and d4 now, and bishop back to a7. Exchanging here doesn't really give you all that much. You simply give white too strong of a center without really gaining anything for it. You can even push e5 and d5, and black will already run into a lot of trouble here. So after d4, bishop to a7, d captures on e5, knight captures on e4, and queen to d5 now, attacking the knight on e4. Knight to c5, attacking the bishop on a4, bishop to c2, and now knight to e7. Queen to d1, and now you can see that Karjakin's bishops are much more active than Carlsen's. Carlsen does have a nice dark square bishop eyeing that f2 pawn, but the light square bishop still isn't really developed, and if Carlsen is not careful, you can easily see an attack being developed here. So Carlsen goes for d5 immediately. We have e captures on d5, queen captures on d5, Carlsen offers an exchange of queens, queen captures, c captures, and rook to d1. So this is move 14, and a lot of lines could have been played. It's not like it's some kind of a forced line that leads to this position. And here a huge surprise for Sergei Karjakin. Of course, he was expecting rook to d8, simply defending the pawn. But Carlsen goes for bishop to g4. Later in an interview, Carlsen will say that it's a very, very, vicious engine line he found, and he prepared it for this game. So what's the idea? The idea is, of course, black is giving up a pawn, but the question is, why is black giving up a pawn? Karjakin grabbed it. Rook captures on d6. Here, Carlsen played bishop to f5, and this was the idea. First bishop to g4 with threats of capturing the knight and doubling white's pawns, and the knight was pinned as the rook was on d1. And now, only now when the rook has captured the pawn on d6, go bishop to f5, and now white has to make a choice. You're attacking his bishop on c2, and either white will capture, and this was, of course, Carlsen's plan. If bishop captures, then knight captures. This comes with an attack on the rook. So you do have to move the rook somewhere. Rook to d1 seems like the best idea, but now comes rook 8 to d8. And now you see white's problem. All of white's pieces are undeveloped. Okay, the rook is developed, but black is already threatening to simply capture it. And after you exchange, again, white is completely undeveloped, and for the price of that one pawn, black has extreme activity here. and if white hopes to survive this position, he will have to give back material. Let's say knight d2. You don't want to allow rook d1, but then knight to d3 is coming with an attack on the f2 pawn. There is no way to defend the pawn. The bishop is also attacking it, so Carlsen would equalize in material, but he would keep a much more active position. So this was his idea when he played this bishop to g4 and bishop back to f5 idea. But Karjakin doesn't go for this. He doesn't capture, and of course he does have to defend his bishop. He plays knight to a3. We have knight to e4 by Carlsen, now attacking the f2 pawn, and now you see the idea behind the pawn sacrifice. Here Carlsen wins the bishop pair. So bishop captures, and now rook back to d1. Knight to f5, we have knight to c4, rook to e8, bishop to e3, offering an exchange of bishops, and now comes bishop captures. And here Karjakin could maybe try and bring his king over, try something else, but his rook is still undeveloped, the bishop is still undeveloped, and here Karjakin decides to simply give up his extra pawn, but Carlsen will also be deprived of the bishop pair. So we have bishop to e3, bishop captures, knight captures, pawn captures, and now, of course, Carlsen does have a bishop against a knight, but he's still a pawn down. So he can try to outmaneuver something here, but the engine completely agrees with Carlsen's response here, so I guess all is well. Bishop captures on f3, pawn captures, and now rook captures on e3. Carlsen equalized in material, and he does have a better pawn structure. It's 2 pawn islands against 3 pawn islands. But on the other hand, Karjakin's rook will be more active as he immediately plays rook to d7. This comes with an attack on the b7 pawn, so rook to b8, and now rook 8 to d1. Now Karjakin doubles up on the d file, already threatening rook to d8 with check. So king comes to f8, now comes king to f2, attacking Carlsen's rook. Rook to e7, now rook to d8 check. Rook to e8, rook captures on b8, rook captures, and again rook to d7. So Carlsen does have a better pawn structure, but Karjakin's rook is much more active. King to e8, attacking the rook. We have rook to c7, and now you can't approach the rook because you have to keep an eye on your kingside pawns. So b5 by Carlsen, and the engine once again agrees with him. We have rook to c6, now attacking the a6 pawn, and now rook to a8. c4, breaking up that small chain on the queen side. King to d7, and now first c captures on b5. Pawn captures on b5, and now rook to b6. Rook captures on b5. Now the b2 pawn is defended, and the material is once again equal. Now Carlsen does have 1 pawn island against 3 pawn islands, but still it's impossible to push for advantage here. Rook to a4 was played. Now comes king g3, rook d4 check, king to b7 check, rook to b7 check, king e6, rook to b6 check, king f5, rook to b5 check, and here after king e6, rook b6, king f5, rook b5, and king e6. It was a threefold repetition, and the players basically agreed to a draw. So a very nice game, even though it's a draw, but it's not like a dead draw from the start. They did play it out until move 41. Time control was reached, and then the players agreed that there is no point in pushing this, especially since Carlsen won his first game with the white pieces. He doesn't mind an early draw in round 2, and he will push for advantage in round 3 once again with the white pieces. So yeah, it's a very nice game between these two rivals, and it's very interesting here at this moment where this rook to d1 was played, and instead of this rook to d8, Carlsen surprised him with bishop to g4. And like we said, move 14, and this is how far preparation goes in these high-level games. So yeah, Karjakin didn't go for it, but yeah, bishop to f5. It's like Carlsen said in an interview after the game. Once you see it, it really makes sense. But finding this over the board, very unlikely, for a human. So yeah, Karjakin didn't fall for this idea. He found knight to a3, refuting Carlsen's idea. So a very nice game by the Minister of Defense as well against this nicely prepared variation. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Bartosz Barwickowski for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check two of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, most likely with a game or two from my 2013 Candidates Tournament Series. But then tomorrow, after round 3 of Norway Championship continues, then I will cover that, of course, as well. So yeah, thank you all, and I will see you soon.